chambers. And so what I'm going to do is drill them. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask them a lot of great questions, and they have mics right in front of them, and we want to just hear what they have to share with us. And so my first question starts out like this. I wanted to use the title from a recent article to ask this first question. And the title is, "One Size Does Not Fit All. Black Millennials Demand More from the Church." Please welcome Lauren Clark, who is joining us.
Maya Mayberry is joining us.
Who is that?
Maya Mayberry.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but Maya, you're more than welcome to join us if you wish. If you wish. Nobody is going to be pressured. So let me start this question again. So the title of this article was, "One Size Does Not Fit All. Black Millennials Demand More from the Church." So my question is, what are Black millennials demanding or requiring from the church today?
I think that one of the main things that millennials really look for in a church is a church that's authentic and transparent. They know that, we know that I'm just a few years outside of the millennials. Nate teases
Just a few
me.
years.
Just a few years.
Okay.
But I think often you hear about, churches that are not relevant as they could be. They may not meet the needs in the sense that when they're really struggling, we don't want somebody to tell us just to go pray about it. We don't want somebody just to quote scriptures and act like they have never walked in our shoes or that they have never struggled through anything. We want to know that you are human just like us and that you had a life before you were saved. And I know that some people act like they, descended from heaven with Jesus. But I think really one of the main things that millennials look for is authenticity and someone to say that even if I haven't been there and done that, that I can relate, that I understand how you could struggle with that. And, many times people have been there and done that, but they may not tell the truth about it. And so we look for truth. We look for people who are going to, show that they have flesh and blood running through their veins, and that it isn't always as easy as Christians try to make it seem. That's one thing. And I'll let some of the others answer before I say some more.
For me, I would say it would be just a church that sometimes, like kind of what Andrea said, she kind of summed it all up. But whenever you encounter young adults, just remember that they are still trying to figure their way out, trying to learn, we're trying to see what life is about, testing some things. And then a lot of times we're distracted too. So whenever we do see them, embrace us and say, hey, it's going to be okay, you're going to make it. But like she said, scriptures and stuff, it does help, but sometimes we just want somebody just to listen. And even if we're about to make the wrong mistake, but just still listen to what we're saying and share some of our stories, because like I said, sometimes we don't like to share them, but you can't share too much, but just to shed some light on them, how you overcame and went through some things too as well. That's what I would say. And just to be open. I know there is a traditional way to do things, but just to be open to see new ideas and ways to continue to draw young adults in and helping them to understand that you can do the traditional way, but then there's still a way to understand them.
All right. So authenticity and being real, being trustworthy, those types of things came out in the responses that they just gave. How many of you all have been 21 to 39? How many of you all like people telling you what to do when you were 21 and 39? I got one hand. All right. So a lot of times what I was hearing is that young adults, they want you to share with them your life experience when you were that age. And sometimes you have to tell some stories that are not so favorable because the way you look now look real different from the way you did when you were 21 to 39, right? 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 Okay. I know for me, it looked real different. So, but I think they want to hear the honest story. What was it like when I was your same age? And then what did older people think about you? All right. Oh, dress is too short? Okay. All right. They didn't like the dances. They didn't like what you wore. They didn't like what you said. And so we have to think, how did we feel when we were their age and how older people responded to us? And then we get older, and unfortunately, we respond to the younger generation that same way. So try to remember, how was it for you when you were 21 to 39? All right, so I'm going to move on to the next question. In this publication, Atlanta Black Star, an article noted that 66% of American young adults who regularly attended church during their high school years stopped going to church at least a year between the ages of 18 and 22. Why do you think this happens, and what can the church do to keep 18 to 22-year-olds engaged in the church?
For me, it was, I didn't have Deborah Goodman waking me up.
Okay.
I was 10 hours away, so being honest, I can't get a whooping now at 33, so she probably called and said, did you make it to church? Yeah, it was real good.
So you would tell an untruth?
I would tell an untruth. Just, I knew I should have been in church, but it's just, and I can't say that because college is different. You know, college, you got the same ramifications as church as to where mom's not there, but at college you get a grade, you know, and you those grades report back to home anyway, so if you're not passing that class, then they're going to know. But church, ain't nobody grading me about church, so it was, like, I just got home at 3:30 in the morning. I ain't going to church tomorrow. So, I mean, just, and it's your first time really experiencing freedom from that 18-year-old experience to right outside of leaving your parents' house. So it's just the freedom, and you trying to find balance, and you trying to work your way, navigate your way through life. And it just depends on, you know, where you are. Mine was, I was 10 hours away. Mama can't tell me what to do 10 hours away. So.
To piggyback off what Nate said, it's more nobody's there to hold you accountable. Your mama's not waking you up, and they ain't saying if you go out, you got to get up and go to church. You know the rules, but you're not necessarily going to do that. Also, I mean, you're still trying to find yourself from 18 to 22. You're trying to figure out. I know it's a period for myself where I had took world religions. And so they had us studying religions from around the world, and that really questioned my faith, because I'm like, who's to say Christianity's the right thing? I think my parents almost went off the deep end on that one. But, you know, that was a big turning point for me in my faith, is just trying to figure out why I believe what I believe. And I know nowadays there's this, I was reading an article about how people are becoming more spiritual and burning sage and, you know, practicing witchcraft. And, you know, I think it's mind-boggling to me personally, but, you know, I know that's one of the things that are out and about nowadays. They're believing in stones and in different, you know, different ways and religions as opposed to Jesus and Christ and the Holy Spirit, you know. So I think that's a big gap too. So.
And also at the age, once you first leave your parents' house, a lot of times a job kept me out of church. You want money, you try to be independent. You don't want to depend on mom and dad for everything. So you go to work, and sometimes, unfortunately, the hourly jobs aren't Monday through Friday. They're on Saturdays and Sundays. And even when I got home, I worked a job where I was hourly, but on Saturdays it was time and a half, and on Sundays it was double time. So for me, it was like, I'm about to go make double the pay on Sunday, even if that means I miss church. I pray in the morning, but I need this money. So, well, I'm just, at that time, 18 years old, mama said, I ain't paying your phone bill no more. You got to figure some things out.
And young people are really thinking about making money. So when they get out of college and you have debt, and you're thinking about how can I pay off this debt, pay my bills, live on my own. And so those things become distractions or barriers to doing what they may have been taught to do. So, but you all, and what's interesting is that when you're working with millennials, and I have to always understand this, I've gotten 2 texts that people are en route, they're on the way. Now they knew we started at 6:30, but they're coming. So that, so we have to be flexible. We have to be flexible. And so, and 6:30 sometimes doesn't work for young adults because they are working. And some of them don't get off until 6 or 6:30. So those are things that we have to keep in mind. But going back to the first part of that question, you all gave us some really good ideas of what causes this 18 to 22-year-old group not to stay engaged in church. And so you said, and Lauren, you gave a really good one. You said, when you went to college, you were introduced to new ideologies about, different religions and all of that, and it caused you to even question your faith. And I think that's something that we need to take note of. And then we also heard that, mom and dad are not there to hold us accountable anymore. And then we also want freedom. I know when I went to college, I felt like I was let out of a cage. I really did. Because my life was so regimented. I had to go to church and school and, work and do all, and be in by 12, and I was 18. So I went to college, and it was like free. I'm free. Thank God. He took care of me in the midst of it all. So freedom is something that we oftentimes think about. Many of us go away to college, and we're thinking about grades and those types of things and enjoying our social life. And so that's what keeps people maybe from not staying engaged with church. But what could the church do to help those that are 18 to 22 when they finish high school to stay engaged with church?
I think that we definitely need to be up to date with technology and various methods of communication, because I hear millennials all the time saying, hey, we could make better use of our time. Stand by just a second. I'm sorry. But, as Reggie read at the beginning, we're very conscious of time, and we don't want people to waste our time. And, when you can, I know Nate and I have talked about this many times, when you can go to a service and be in and out in an hour, it makes you think twice when you come to a service, and sometimes, they're there for 3 hours, especially some of the more charismatic churches. And there's nothing wrong with, praising the Lord and giving God thanks. But it becomes challenging, really, when, especially if you have to go to work and you're trying to do the right thing and you say, I want to give God my time. I want to do the right thing and prioritize and, give God my best. But at the same time, If I can come, praise the Lord, and go home in an hour, that is, that's appealing to a lot of people. And especially, I say stay up to date, so even when I absolutely cannot be there, because there are things that do come up. Sometimes people can't help their job schedule. Lauren is a nurse. She can't, you never know what, schedule she may get. And so if you can have live streaming, in ways that people can still stay connected and engaged even if they can't physically be in this building. And I think that a lot of churches do that really well. And so, I think that we need to rethink this idea that people don't love God if they're not always here on Sunday mornings. Sometimes they just can't help it. Sometimes they, are in a situation right now where they're trying to get back to where they can come regularly, but we need to be able to reach beyond these walls and connect with them even when they can't be here. So that's I think that's one way that we keep millennials engaged and connected, that the church can do better at that.
Anyone else?
I think providing more responsibility, like I think the young adult, they take ownership in things, so they don't want to feel like they let someone down. And if they have responsibility, then most of the times they'll come through, other than being here at 6:30. But I think the ownership thing is big with our generation. They don't want to let people down. They don't want you to talk about them and say, well, we knew they couldn't do that. I think we're all about proving people wrong that say we can't do something. So I think the whole ownership piece is big.
I want to piggyback on what Reverend Chambers was talking about as far as technology is concerned. And my question is, what can the church do to embrace new media and technology trends? And one of the things that she said was live streaming, because you may have a person that is at home, but they're able to tap into the service because they're able to look at it on their computer or phone and still pay their tithes. And so, but what are some other technology or trends that the church needs to consider today besides live streaming?
YouTube channels, active on all social media streams, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. My generation, you can email me, but if it's not important, I'm not gonna write you back. I might not read it. I'm big on not answering voicemails, but I'll check Facebook in the morning when I get up. I'll check my inbox. So just being active, not just posting a scripture. Tell people what's going on in the church. That's the way we connect with each other. We're not, Andy sends out an email that today I got it at 6:01. I don't check my email. I check it once a day, and that's usually when I'm laying down at night to see if I got anything important. But I'm on social media all throughout the day. So I think staying engaged and being active on social media helps out a lot.
Anybody else have any other suggestions? Did Nate get them all?
I like the phone deal.
Okay.
I mean, and that's not just a millennial thing. Most seasoned adults, the first thing they keep is their cell phones. They always got their cell phone in their hand. So if that text comes through, then you know what's going on. So you feel engaged. So I don't mind a text. Like even with, like you say, pay tithes. A lot of people, it's easier to text 45321, put the amount in, and send it, as opposed to remembering to go get a check or go to get the cash out and put it in every day. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we can do additional ways of giving, and even an app. A lot of churches have an app that is specifically for their church. So you may have an ABC app, and you can go on there, and that would connect you with all of the social media streams. That would connect you with YouTube, so you could view past sermons. Because, of course, a website But even that, if you can have it at your fingertips on your phone through an app, and y'all know what I'm talking about when I say app, like on your smartphones, it's an application that actually connects you with specific whatever your, if you're looking for Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, you can just press that app and you don't have to go to the main website. But if we have one specifically for the church, where you can give, where you can, chat with one another, where you can post updates, where you can let people know about, funerals that are coming up, anything that can keep you engaged. I think that Nate named a lot of those, but an app would also be helpful as well.
And then I just thinking of like marketing and PR. When you watch TV, The Lion King just came back. Even though everybody knows what The Lion King is, it was those graphics that pulled you in and said, hey, I'm going to that movie. That's the young adult generation. You have to find a way to pull us in. We're not going to just come just because my mama can call. She texts me every Sunday morning. If I show up, I show up. I don't even write it back no more because I know it's coming. But being consistent with marketing and PR, you got to understand that technology is thriving, and it's not going to stop. So just staying with the times and not 3 steps behind helps out a lot, because a lot of the times we're playing catch up. And Reggie started doing a Facebook page. Well, we off Facebook now. We on Instagram. So it's just, the trend is, when you see your mama and grandma get on Facebook, it's like, I got to find somewhere else to go. Yeah, so just staying with the time and not 3 steps behind.
Nate, are you saying I'm old? I'm still on Facebook?
No. I'm just saying we're trying to catch up.
Okay. So you all gave some great suggestions. So you said a YouTube channel. We heard social media platforms. We said emails are good for some, but not for all.
Right.
Using messaging and apps and marketing and PR. But the one thing that you also said was consistency. And so we have to do it all the time. So it's not we start and stop. And so I thought all those were great. But now I think, and let's welcome Kim Barnes to the to the panel. One thing I noticed that 4 of our panelists, they have little kids. And Jaden is showing us exactly what he should be doing at his age. But look how challenging that can be when you have to get here and be on a program. And I saw Kim walk in with her 1-year-old, but she's here. And so I really appreciate that. And so we know both Lauren and Danielle have little ones too, but they're here. So thank you all for being here. So I applaud that. But I wanted to, so we talked about all of these different ways to communicate. What could the young adults do to develop a team, to develop a plan, to implement or create these communication applications?
I think the first thing would be is to get all of them here and to pitch a plan and leave the plan as to so where it's still open for them to put input into it. And then once they give you the input, then you challenge them to say, hey, go create it. Because I can't depend on a Rev to show me how to work Facebook. It's not gonna happen. I'm more advanced than him, but I think that even if you challenge us to create a more tech-friendly app, I think that we can utilize the resources that we all have as young adults, not necessarily just in the church, and maybe even in the church, it might be somebody who knows code and can show us how to do it. But I think it's something that we could own, and we should be able to teach the older generations how to keep up with it and maneuver it that way. And that also it's almost like bridging that gap where now I'm going to Miss Stanley, showing her, now we communicating to where she, Miss Edwards is real good for it, where she'll call and say, hey, I just don't know how to use this, can you show me? Okay. So now me and Miss Edwards developing a relationship inside the church, and it could blossom from there. But I think we have to take again, ownership of what we want to see the church become. But I think also, even with taking that ownership, it has to be, there's protocol to everything. So I think we have to be given that, hey, this is y'all baby, y'all take care of it, do what you want to do with it.
Okay. So I heard putting together a team, pitching a plan, submitting the plan, getting the blessing from leadership, implementing the plan, but also being willing to teach those who may not be familiar with those various apps how to use it. So there was a whole lot in what you all said. Because I said last week, we want to put, practical application of what we want to do to engage young adults. And so I'm writing all of that down. And when you say it, we're going to come back to you to help us to figure out how to do it. Okay. All right. And so, but where Nate left off, it leads me into my next question, and it really talks about these intergenerational connections, interpersonal things between the various generations. The question is, what should the church consider when blending traditional ideology with new day ideas and concepts? So what should the church consider when blending traditional ideology with new ideas and concepts?
We're going to pass that on to the pastor.
I think that, anytime we're talking about intergenerational anything, I think there has to be respect for both, for all ages involved. And I think that a lot of times people think that when new ideas are introduced, that means get rid of or eliminate the more traditional ideas, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think that there's a way to integrate both, to merge both, to have the wisdom of the ages inform the new ideas, and have the new ideas inform some of the more traditional ways. I don't think it has to be either or, and I think that's where a lot of times the church falls short, where we have to say either or. It should be both and because there are great things that happen, in my parents' day that still help me today, that I still I laugh at sometimes some of the things I say to Jaden that that my parents said to me, and it still helps me, it still nourishes me, it still helps me to get through and not give up. And so, and then there are some things that my mother says, wow, y'all really have done some things different that I wish we would have had. And so I think that we feed off of each other, and we realize the blessing of having multiple perspectives and multiple ways of doing things. And we just respect and love each other and learn from each other. Being willing to learn from each other is a great thing.
And I'll make the question plainer. So how can the young adult generation better interact with the baby boomers and Gen X generation?
Maybe some more integrated activities like we used to do. Will engage both sides. Putting together those activities will allow dialogue, but also something that's fun that you can learn but also receive.
I'm going to pause for a minute to see if there are any questions from the audience before I go on, because I have more questions. We have a question over here, Mr. Roach. All right. Anybody want to respond to that comment? I think it's an important comment because of the way that you all grew up. What were you exposed to versus the generation before?
Have you seen the generation behind us? I might be not answering your question correctly, but I think that I came in a generation where I could do both. If the power, I was exposed to fishing, hunting, trying to survive. If I was that kid that me and Brian would go to Miss Clark's house, she'd give us a cup, we had to stencil our name in the cup. Don't come back in this house. Stop running in and out. There's a water hose out there, get water. My worst whooping came from not being at home when the street lights was there. So I had that freedom, but it also it was limitations on my freedom. And with that freedom as a kid, you learn to explore. If I can't be in the house, what can I do for fun? Well, now you see, he can work a cell phone better than most adults. And that's why I say this generation, if all the lights, everything, whatever y'all want to call it, world destruction, who's going to lead the way? The generation behind me can't do it. So that's why I say I think we were we might have had a lot more freedom than y'all, but we were in that generation that we still can carry on the old traditions into the new world.
I'm going to piggyback off of that because I feel like we were still held to the accountable as far as following rules, regulations, because the corporate world hasn't changed that much since, but it is a challenge for millennials. I'm not gonna lie and sugarcoat it, to have more rules, more regulations, more policies and procedures. We still have to follow it, even though we did grow up a little more freer, we can speak our mind a little bit more than what was allowed when the baby boomers was coming up. And I mean, I'm learning this from my 16-year-old brother too. I'm like, what'd you say? Okay. That's just not the way, we were allowed to do things. So in that, know that we were raised right. For one thing, we're not just gonna take it by the horns and tear it up, but we do have a lot more to say. We're more vocal. We're gonna be a little more outgoing and forthcoming, but we're gonna get the job done in the same ticket.
And I also think that time just changes. I got 3 tattoos, but you'll never know it because you don't see it. I was raised where, you don't outwardly show that. Or if you do, you wear a long sleeve shirt. Well, I work at a school with a librarian. He got sleeves all down his arm, tattoos on his neck. It's just, times have changed. Even in corporate America, you don't see, unless you're in New York, you don't see that CEO wearing a suit every day. He might come in jeans, a sandal, and a t-shirt, and that's how he comes to work. So times change, but everything is still the same. Work still has to get done. Now they just accept it. Even at church, I can't remember until we got over here where we had casual Sunday. It was always wear your Sunday's best when you was at church. So I think times are changing, but even though we're in casual clothes, we still getting the same message coming through those doors. So just be mindful that I wasn't raised like you, you wasn't raised like me, this generation. And it took me hard. I got a little sister, and I used to, Betty, how you letting this get away? I couldn't get away with none of this. And the conversation went, well, there were certain things that you could do that Tori couldn't do. And as older, he said, I understand what she can handle that you can't handle, and I understand what you can handle that she can't handle. So that's why you got to do such and such and she couldn't. So it's almost like stay in the kid's plate. No, I'm just playing. But I mean, we are very mindful, but at the same time, just the times have changed, and we're more of a relaxed generation.
Back to what you were saying as far as more open, don't be afraid of the conversation. that's what I think is a barrier to a lot of things. I think that the older generations are scared of offending, well, across both lines. I think people are scared of offending one another. And just ask the question. I mean, I appreciate when someone asks me. I'm not really a forthcoming person, but if you ask me, I'm going to tell you. And and I do like to ask questions to other people, especially if it's something different. It's always amazing to me to learn and to grasp how you think, how you move. So I think just not being afraid of the conversation and just open up and ask us, why don't you comb your hair? Or, why didn't you wear a skirt today? But, in everything in order and decent, but just open up and don't be afraid of that, because like they said, we were raised. I wasn't raised here, but I've been here a long time. But we were raised in the church, so we have manners. So just ask.
Mr. Roach, thank you for your question, your comment, because it generated a lot of response. So do we have any other questions from the audience? I see Ms. Edwards and then Reverend Williams all the way at the back. So Ms. Edwards, your question. I'm sorry, Ms. Edwards, let me get a mic to you because we're having trouble here.
Okay, my question involves technology. The comment was that the church we are 3 steps behind. Now, if we're talking about technology, when technology changes so quickly, how in the world will the church ever be able to be caught up? Technology changes overnight.
But churches do it every Sunday, every year. And the cell phone, I'm pretty sure everybody got a cell phone in this room. Whether it's a flip phone or the latest iPhone, it still makes phone calls. So, and I'm not saying we have to keep up with the Joneses, but there are certain technology pieces that we lack. I mean, you go to, like she said, you can stream a service. I can go to the church I was at in Nashville right now and go to the archives and look at a sermon from 1987 if I want to. My iPhone, I might get an update every, once a month? And that iPhone might say, hey, we just sent you an update to debug something that was going on with the phone, speed it up a little bit. So once we make that initial technology jump, I think the rest of it will follow. It's almost like it reboots itself.
I know of churches that do it every day. It's churches in Tulsa that if you ever visit once or if you ever go to their website, they are constantly sending you reminders. They're sending you notifications, and I'm talking about push notifications to your phone. So in addition to just the traditional text messages, I'm talking about they're sending notifications saying, hey, service starts in 15 minutes. And it'll like do a countdown. And then in 15 minutes, it'll say, hit the app and, stream the service live. They'll, send you constant updates about what's going on social media. They may send the commercial to you on your phone. They will not only, they won't depend on you to just go to different social media websites and apps. They will send it to you. I'm talking about it'll boost to your phone, and you don't have to ever, actually initiate the contact. They initiate it with you. And it's not, churches have figured out how to do it, and they do it well. I mean, the marketing is outstanding where, like I said, if you ever have any contact with them, they are seeking you out. they are chasing you down. They are saying, hey, we're so glad that you came by. Hey, what can we do to get you back? Hey, what can we do to keep you engaged and connected? And they're not asking for anything per se, but they just want you to be involved, and they want you to know that they want you. And so when churches don't take even that extra, that, what we consider a baby step to say, we want you. I think part of staying connected is helping people to know that you're valued, you're wanted, you are, we miss you when you're gone. And I mean, it's, like I said, it's some churches in Tulsa that do it very well each and every day. And they don't wait for you to come on Sunday mornings. They're doing it throughout the week, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
All right, so it sounds like one of the things that we can't do is just know that we can do it without applying it. So how do we put it into action and make this happen? And so probably from a lot of those churches, and some of those churches I know have hired staff that are doing just that. That's their job. But some of those churches have teams of young adults that is their role. It's kind of like an auxiliary. They work on that, and that's their only job. And so those are things that we're going to have to keep in mind. So Reverend Williams had a question all the way in the back.
Yes, it's a three-part question, actually. First part of it is, what as millennials have you found meaningful in the church? Second part question is, what do you think, or what value has the church been to you? And then I want to know if you think the church, baby boomers and Generation X, has prepared you, if you had to become the leaders of the church now, how do you think the church has prepared you?
Let's start with question number one. That's a whole bunch. Very good questions. Very, very good questions. And so, but the first question dealt with the meaningfulness of the church. So anybody want to respond there?
Well, I would say, the church is the backbone of, who I have become. I definitely think that, for just saying for me, because picking back on what Andrea said earlier, you go back to those scriptures, and it may be a song that, and it could be a hymnal that you think of that kind of gets you through that tough time to where you just don't see a way, and I know everybody says, to pray about it, and like right now I can't pray, but I can think of this song real quick, because sometimes all you can say is, Lord, have mercy, and you just can keep on going, but the church is a very valuable thing to millennials, I believe. Some of them. It's a complex question.
Meaningfulness of the church, and what value has the church been to you?
Of immense value that I don't have time to tell you. I mean, the relationships that have been formed, Miss Edwards was my big sister, and we still talk today. We still have that connection. I tease her because, if you know her, she doesn't drive the expressways. And so we spent a lot of time driving around Tulsa the long way. And so we had a lot of time to talk. And I could, name off many people in this church who were my teachers, were my, youth workers, were just great mentors and examples in my life that have been so meaningful, even today. You've taught me how to parent. You've taught me how to be the woman that I am. You've taught me how to be the human being that cares about people, that cares about the community and this world we live in. So not just the people and the relationships, but also the teachings. I mean, Lauren talked about the songs that we remember, even some of the sermons we can recall. So I think that, we just don't have time to really tell it all, that the church has made such an impact on our lives. Most of us grew up, even if not in this church. I know most of us on this panel have grown up in this church, but have grown up knowing the Lord, and so that is like I said, I could go on all day about that, so I'll let somebody else speak to that as well.
I agree. One reason why I love this church in particular is the familyhood, and I appreciate people calling me or texting me, and when they haven't seen me, to check on me. And church in general, I prefer a hymnal. I grew up on hymnals, so that's my thing. If I can't do anything else, that's my time in the restroom, TMI. But not using the restroom, just in the restroom. But that's my closet. That's where I sing. That's where I pray, and that's where my foundation has been, is through the church. And I am appreciative for the church, and I wish that the world could see what we could see, so that it could be more incorporated in millennials' lives. So I am very deeply rooted in the church, so I appreciate it.
Well, and Reverend Williams' last question was, has the church prepared you to be the next leaders of the church?
Yes. So I could just drop the mic on that, right?
You got to expound.
But what I failed to mention before, if I can just go back, I think that we said, different ways that we've been impacted, but I think it goes without saying that what Reverend CL was to many of you, Reverend Potter is to us, Reverend MC Potter is to us. And so, the fond stories that you all have of Reverend CL and that you talk about, all of the great memories. I didn't have that. I was born in 1978. And so, I don't have those early memories of him. And so Reverend Potter has been that for me, what you all remember about Reverend CL. And so one of the great values and meaningful things that I will always reference is to have leadership like Reverend Potter in our lives. I mean, all of us can talk about how, when we had the birthday party and we roasted him and talked about all of the fond memories we had of him and Mrs. Potter. I mean, we could go on all day about that. So I think that the relationship that we have with him, having him as a leader, a pastor, a friend, because he's very, approachable, a coach. I mean, it goes without saying that we love him and we know that he loves us as well. So about the leadership part, yes, and I'll pass the mic on about that.
Do we have the leadership and are we ready? Yes, because one thing that I do like about Rev is that before he does anything, and everybody knows that he's going to pray about it. And I'll tell you one thing, whether you're praying or not, but if you're praying, you already know when he comes to you. And it's up to you to take that charge and do it, because he's very serious about it. And that's what I can say, that he's prepared us to be serious about what we do. He not only just shows, it's something that he do ever since I've walked into Antioch. I can say that he is very serious about it. So whenever he does come to me about something, I already know the answer. We know the answer. It's just that Are we ready? Like me, was I equipped to be a deacon? Was I prepared? All the stuff was in the makings as I look back. The day that I got the call, yes, I was afraid because I felt like I didn't want to let you guys down. That's the biggest thing that we, like you said, we worry about is letting you guys down. I want to be proud in what I do, and I'm a very proud deacon, and I understand all of what I went through to get there, from Connie Mae on to everything that she done, his mother, everything. I just think about that. So yes, we are ready. It's just we got to, the praying part and helping us to understand what it is and taking that charge.
All right. We're going to change tones. We're going to talk about money, and particularly around tithing. What can the church do to encourage more millennials to tithe? They're thinking. Okay, here we go.
To me, I would say for it to be right off the top, which I know they have it where they take it out of your account every 2 weeks. It's kind of like at St. Francis, how they had when I used to work there. Before I even got my check, they would take my car payment out. We have to have something that's going to take it out before we touch it. I can say that I tithe, but not all of us do that, but something that before we even see our paycheck, because for us to see if we got to take that out first, like we got to give that, and then this is what do. I might get some, we're going to make that choice to do that. So if it comes off the top, maybe even Uncle Sam can settle, I don't know, but something to that effect to make sure that it gets to the church and pay our tithes.
There needs to be an app for that, just saying.
There needs to be an app to pay your tithes online. Okay, all right.
If there was something to where we could kind of, I think the Antioch app, if they had a section where you could just pay it on that Friday, when your direct deposit hits, you go ahead and pay it. Then that way, we don't have no excuse. Somebody's got to hold us accountable. I mean, I know we all grown, but,
Okay. So
we fall short too.
Being held accountable is important. Maybe a cash app or an app so it can come out soon as you get paid. So you don't have to, it doesn't feel like any loss. The church is getting what they should be getting from the top. Okay? Anything else? How do we encourage young adults or millennials to tithe?
I think, what was that, 2 weeks ago, Paula? We had a meeting about the 60th. We got into a debate about memorabilia, about we're going to do a program, we're going to do. I brought up this great idea, and Sheila basically punched me in the face without punching me. And her statement was, well, the young adults ain't the ones tithing. I get home, Mama says the same thing. So to me, it hit me like, well, if all the seasoned saints died off, what would the church be? Or would it even still exist? And then I began to ask myself, well, do we even have enough young adults in this church to push forward? So I think just having those, and I know this is probably embarrassing to a lot of people, but I hear stories about how at the old church, Reverend Potter and them would put your name up on the wall if you didn't tithe. And oh, that was a rumor?
It sounds like that was not an accurate
In the
statement.
program? In the program?
It was in the bulletin? It was in the bulletin, okay.
Look, not on the wall, but in the bulletins.
Okay, it sounds like those that paid their tithes, their names were in the bulletin.
But
all right.
And I know this is sad to say, but
And we know that would not work today.
But even if though, it might, because it's sad to say you don't want your name to be on that list. I mean, I think of it as think of it like this. I don't do certain things. I work with kids. So the last thing that I want to do is get arrested. It's not that I'm scared to go to jail. It's not that I know my mom and dad will come get me out. I know I could pay, well, he gonna make me sleep at night, but it's the fear side of it, I'm not scared to go. The thing is, I'm fearful of a newspaper called Just Busted or a desk blotter where somebody can see it and then take that picture and put it on Facebook. And now I'm not just an embarrassment to myself, but I can't go to that kid and tell him not to do the same thing that I just did. So to me, I take the necessary precautions to, all right, I don't need to go here tonight. I had maybe one too many. I'm an Uber home. I don't want to embarrass myself, not just myself, but my family. So even, when I go vote, if mama beats me there, she the first person call and say, hey, don't make this household look bad by not voting. So if it's public knowledge, I don't know. We don't want to be embarrassed at all.
I think that you still can't underestimate the power of teaching. The more you teach about it, the more you talk about it. I know that, especially as preachers, because of some of the indiscretions that you've heard about preachers that, that some may have more money or have done, I think a lot of times we shy away from that topic, but we have to continue to teach. That's how I learned to tithe, because my parents, they were like, oh, you gonna tithe. And from as small as I can remember, even when it was time for Sunday school, they gave me my money for Sunday school, and they said, you will participate and give back to this church. You will, when you have $1, you will give 10 cents. I mean, we were taught that from as small as I can remember. And so, yes, I had parents who said this is not a choice, but I was taught. I was not only taught at home, I was also taught in the church. And it was reinforced in the people around me, and I saw them giving. I mean, the teaching we need to keep doing. The modeling, I appreciated when Rev, has us now as ministers come and deacons come out first. We're modeling to you that we're not asking you to do something that we're not willing to do. So I think that, again, the teaching and the examples that you show, and I mean, it's all of these things help to encourage young people. But again, I'll go back to the authenticity. I appreciate the tithe appeals. They don't have to be 20 minutes, but the tithe appeals that say, hey, I have been there when I didn't have a lot of money, but I trusted God with my money. And I still gave, and this is how God blessed me. That helps somebody who is wondering, should I really give my last dime and I still have to pay PSO, and I still have to make sure my car payment is made, and I still have to put food on the table? I mean, those things are helpful. And so, we have to keep teaching. We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep modeling. We have to keep encouraging one another that, hey, you can do this. We can get through this together. So.
Very good. And the thing is, we have to also link, when we pay our tithes, it is to help to make sure that the church can operate. So when we come in here and the lights are on, that's money. When we come here in the air is on, that's money. When the heat is on, that's money. When the kitchen is operating, they turn on the stove, that's gas. So we have to think, in order for this church to operate, we have to encourage people to tithe and pay offering. So those are things that we have to keep in mind. But the church, in order for the church to operate, the church needs money. Can't operate without it. All right. So thank you all for giving your take on how do we encourage young adults to tithe. My next question is, what does an active young adult ministry look like?
Participation.
There's like a church here in Tulsa. They always invite me to their stuff, but I don't go because I'm loyal to Antioch. But They have Bible studies outside of church, and they may be on a Friday night. Let's see, bowling. You know, just the activities that we used to do that we've gotten away from. And then, I mean, they do the same things that we do. They have their own Sundays and stuff like that, but they definitely have those push notifications, all that extra. Reach out to you on all social media. And when you see their young adult choir and their young adult Sundays, you be like, wow, you know, like, that's awesome. We could do the same thing, you know? Because it's not about the numbers, but what you do with what you have.
I'm gonna push that question back to you because you came through Antioch when the young adults were thriving. At least me looking as a kid, I couldn't wait to be a young adult. So what do you think it would take to get us back to that place?
I think times have changed. And so what it took to engage me and keeps engaging me is very different from what it takes today. And I'm trying to figure it out myself. Because I believe that we can have a thriving young adult ministry, but I think we have to really hear from young adults so that we can craft it that in a way that's going to be appealing to them. And so that's why I'm asking the question. So certainly I have some ideas, but I'm realizing I'm a little bit long in the tooth with being able to plan effectively for young adults today because the thinking is just so different.
I think that you need to have, in addition to the Bible studies and the Sunday schools and time of truth, and I think even that has to look different than traditional, you know, because again, you have this mobile population that may not always be able to come on Sundays, may not always be able to come on Wednesday nights, and so we have to figure out how to take these staples and foundations of the church and make them accessible to people who can't always get here. So we need to have those foundational elements of Bible study and, you know, Sunday school or some, you know, ways of teaching. But I think we also have to have the recreational and the social activities that also keep you engaged. You know, I think that, again, you see other churches in town that do that well. So, you know, they're still doing the singles ministry. They're still doing the Sunday school, but they're doing it in relevant ways that are creative. I think, so, you know, you have to have those foundational elements. You have to have the social component, but you also have to have something that will help us with our children. You know, ways that, you know, it's hard when you have young children and you want to come to church, but they do all of this, you know, and, you know, some of you look nice at me when it happens, but others look like, will you please get your child? You know, and that's discouraging, really. I mean, it makes you want to stay home. And so if it wasn't my job, a lot of times I would stay home. And, you know, so you need, you know, things that will engage your children and help you to not only be a better parent, but will help your child to grow and learn, because, you know, that's what you are wanting to do, and make sure that you are not only the good parent, but if you are married or if you are single you know, just ways that you can speak to every area of our lives. So that's what an active young adult ministry would look like to me, that really speaks and touches the whole person.
All right, we're going to go back to the audience to see if you have any questions. Anyone have a question from the audience? Ms. Edwards? I'm going to have to push the button and make sure it's green.
Can you give a concrete example of Sunday school must look different. It's one thing to say other churches do it well, but do I have to go to another church to see it done well? Can I go on YouTube to see it done well?
Maybe. And maybe Sunday school isn't in the building. Maybe Sunday school is at IHOP or at Lauren's house, or not necessarily, but maybe it's not here, and maybe it's not at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Maybe it is at 2 p.m. on Sunday. I mean, it could be just many different things.
Yeah, so varying the times, the places. A lot of, when I speak about non-traditional, a lot of times it's not, a lot of churches have gone to small groups. So they do small groups possibly in their homes, or they do, small groups in, it can sometimes be in the building. It may be at some clubhouse, it may be at a restaurant, various places. But so even, I'm saying Sunday school, but I'm talking about that teaching component. It could be any day of the week. You have small groups that meet, various days of the week that's convenient for the members of that group. And they may meet at different places throughout the month. A lot of, some churches have gone to once a month rather than meeting every week, because it's hard for people with different schedules to come together. But, a lot of times, if it's engaging, if they feel like they're connected and they're valued, then whenever you have it, especially if they have formed this bond in the small group, they will make sure that they're able to come. And a lot of times the groups will adjust to make sure that everybody can be there.
We have a question from Tony. You see the green light?
Am I on? Okay. As a co-young adult Sunday school teacher, what happens when you post the lesson to Facebook and you try to get those that don't come on Sunday mornings involved? What happens when you come up with an idea, let's all do a Bible reading plan together and let's discuss that Bible reading plan? You prayed about it, you thought that it was a good idea, but it got shut down. No one responded back. What happens when you are trying to give your all and you get shot down, you get talked about, you get criticized for it? How am I supposed to help as a young adult with you all, as your co-teacher and as a friend? What do I need to do?
I know we started off doing Sunday school. I came back maybe twice with, and being honest, it was just because Miss Potter was doing it. I didn't want her to call me out on it. But I'm not to me, like they say, I'm not an early morning person. I operate better when I'm fully up. So for me to come to Sunday school and be here, and I'm probably was the biggest one that fought to not be at church at 9:30 in the morning during the summer hours, because that only would push some Sunday school up, which means I'm definitely not considering Sunday school. So I wouldn't say to give up on it. I think that you have to find an approach. You have to think about the young adult and think about what engages them. Think about what attracts them to a certain place. Like I said, Sunday, young adults are all about being entertained. So when you say think outside of the box, you don't have to just have church inside these walls. So when you want to invite a young adult, first of all, in order to invite a young adult, you have to have that relationship with a young adult, first of all, because just because you invite me and I don't have a relationship with you, I'm not going to show. But if I got a relationship and saying me and Tony got a relationship, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt just because it's you. But if I don't have a relationship with a person, I'm not going to go. And then the second thing you said, well, I heard you say about Facebook. Well, like I said, a lot of young adults have moved away from Facebook. It's a good platform to go on there and keep in touch with people, but I use Facebook to monitor my kids at school just to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Or if I'm trying to go to Facebook Market and buy something, or, you know what I'm saying, I'm not really engaged in a full-fledged conversation on Facebook like I would be on Instagram or Snapchat.
And I'll say for me, Tony, I didn't know that you had put it on there, but if you would have texted me, I would have went on and looked. So I think it's that push notification, just kind of engaging us more, because I knew nothing about that, because I honestly would have went on and read it.
You know, Tony, like even when, for the choir, the young adult choir, like sometimes I miss rehearsals because I plainly forget. You know, but you text me and I was there. You know, it's just the means of communication, the way to reach out. And then another thing, you know, the Sunday school is the time for me, and I know I'll be at work at 8 a.m. I get it, I know. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard to make it to church on time, let alone Sunday school. So, you know, that's just a constant battle in my household. So, you know.
Yeah. And Tony, good question. But I think we came up with some really good solutions, because they said maybe instead of having it at the time that the normal Sunday school is, maybe it needs to be at 2 o'clock on Sunday. Or maybe it needs to be on a different day. Or maybe it needs to be in a different location. Or maybe it needs to be for breakfast. And so, or maybe we need to be the app that we're using to talk about prayer, use that app to push out notifications that way instead of using just Facebook. And so I think there are a lot of things that we can do differently that will attract young adults. And I think those are the things that we need to consider moving forward. So.
I was just going to add that, you know, like Reggie said earlier, I think that we have to be flexible. And just because it doesn't work the first time doesn't mean that it's not good. Doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. But just be flexible. Be open to, you know, take people's feedback, you know, and it's not personal a lot of times. Like most of them said, they just didn't know it was on there. And, you know, I'm learning more and more working with the youth to be ye flexible.
Question.
To encourage you, I think the question was encourage you to tithe. A lot of times for me, I can look around the building and see what is happening. We got a new area over here. And I know we came back to the idea that everything, the lights, the gas, the water, all of that takes money. Money means tithing. Would the millennials, would you as a group push the idea of what are some things, I mean, you mentioned some technology kinds of things that would say, you know what, my money really is going to help put video screens in the church or help do something in the classrooms. Would that be more of a goal to you to say that I would be more committed to doing tithing because I know it's going for a specific kind of situation? Would that help the idea?
I would say yes to some, but I think that would kind of help us is that when we have the meetings, like I know we come back at 5:30 and you show the financial deal, but I think it should be like an ongoing information showing them this is what the church is needing, this is what we're doing, keeping it in front of us, showing us like, hey, this is what's happening. I know that I can't speak for all of them. I have to say just for me. I know what it takes, but some are not there. But just keeping it in front of them and reminding them, a constant reminder, like you said, a push notification. It might be something Just showing them that, hey, the tithes are here this Sunday or blah, blah, blah. Just something that keeps it in front of them and reminding them.
Anybody else want to respond? Okay. Another question that we have from the audience. Candace in the back.
I just want to present a question to all of you young adults. Where is God and the church as a priority based from 1 to 10, and 1 being the highest priority?
Where is God in the church? And if you were to rank it between 1 and 10, 1 being the highest priority for you, how does God rank for you? They're just thinking.
One. It has to be. He has to be. He is our sole existence. Like, he has to be one. I think it's just the presentation sometimes. So.
And when you think about Antioch Baptist Church, if you were trying to attract more young adults here, what would you say? And I'd like each one of you to answer this about Antioch Baptist Church to attract a young adult to this church. What's that? Repeat the question. Okay. So I'm challenging you to share with some other young adults that are not members of Antioch looking for a church. What would you tell them about Antioch to encourage that young adult to become a member here?
I would talk about I'm big on family, so the family vibe that Antioch has is, I haven't seen it anywhere else. Like, I went to Mount Zion in Nashville, and the one thing that I didn't like was that I didn't have access to, my pastor at the time. I can call Rev, I can go to Rev's house. I mean, I can sit with Rev, and I ain't gonna tell you all his business, but it's just, it's so open. It's everywhere you go, you're gonna have problems. Even in your family, you're gonna have problems. But I think that this church family has found a way to work and create the sense of belonging. I don't feel like I'm not wanted at this church. I feel like everybody in this church has my best interest at heart. I've been here since a child, and this is the only church that I've always known. My grandfather was a pastor, and all he talked about was family, and when I come in Antioch, I didn't realize that me and Andy wasn't sisters until I got older and figured out, how things work. But that just becomes from my parents and her parents being together. Every Friday night, we was always at the Potter's house. So I heard DeMarcus called Miss Potter Meemaw, so she became Meemaw. Rev became Papa. I didn't know the difference. I just knew that this was my family. Even when we got at school, people, why y'all? Well, that's my little cousin. So to me, it's just a family environment. Like, and there are things happening in Antioch, and just being totally transparent. I have a lot of friends who are in church, but the one thing that all the other churches don't have is consistency. And you see a lot of people, well, this week you go to Metropolitan, now I'm at Transformation. So to me, they're jumping towards the trends. It's always a trend. It's always going to be a trend. But one thing that trend does is it dies. So then they continue to move around. To me, I'm all about a relationship. I don't want the trend. I'd rather Antioch go out and create their own trend. If you come, you come. If you leave, you leave. But the nucleus is in the family. And I think that's where a lot of young adults go wrong is that they flop and jump to, they trying to find that sense of belonging, but when they don't find it, they leave. Or if that church, if Miss Winfrey come to me and say something wrong, well, I'm gone. I don't have to take that upon. They don't want to face the challenge and say, hey, it's okay to speak back. And like I said, families, you argue, you fight, but at the end of the day, you can have that critical conversation with somebody and say, hey, I didn't like that. This is how it felt. I don't think that Antioch is that church where you cannot feel like you belong.
Very good. Who's next? Lauren, you have the mic.
One thing that I would say to a young adult that I would want to come to our church is, if you want to be taught the Bible and how it relates to being a young adult, or just something that you're going through, I think, like me, as you know, growing up, at first I didn't understand the scriptures. They was like flying all over my head, like, you know, but I had to go through some things to actually grasp it and understand. But I think a while back, like, Rev kind of just did a 180 to me, you know, and his scriptures have really honed in on being a young adult and actually teaching while he's preaching. And that is one thing, like, if I tell somebody that I go to Antioch, they're like, oh yeah, he's a good teacher. His scriptures are on point. I know. That's why I'm there. And you should come too, you know. So I think that's one thing that is one of the great foundations of Antioch, the way that he actually teaches and makes us understand why we do what we do and why we need to be who we need to be in Christ.
For me, I would say to a young adult, I would invite them because, like she said, the teaching, the consistency, you're never going to get, to me, this is the best church on this side of heaven. I don't care what anybody say. You can't talk about Antioch. You can't even talk about nobody in this place, to me. One of the things that people always ask me, why you don't ever visit churches? Why you don't do that? If my church don't go, I'm not going. Because, you know, those are the things that get you confused. You got to stay focused. So when you go here and there and searching, you're not going to find. You got to stay right here where you begin. He's the same. I don't care. He's not going. Rev is just the same. And that's what I like about this church and the family. Whenever you're going through anything, if somebody passed in your family, you're going to see Antioch somewhere. I don't care if they may not even talk to you every Sunday, but you might see them at the back of the church, or if you're going through something, they might send you a call or text. It's about their family. And that's what I love about Antioch. 'Cause some people, I didn't grow up here, but I feel like I did because of the people, the way they make you feel. Some of my cousins go here, but I didn't know that. I just knew that when I was praying for a church, I said, Lord, I don't know where I'm going to go, but wherever you leave me, that's where I'm going to go. And he led me to Antioch over there when we was on Frankfurt. And I've been here ever since. So for me, you're going to get the teaching. You just got to stay focused and not be trying to figure out, it's here. So that's what I would say to invite somebody.
Kim, you mind going next, and then I'd like Reverend Chambers to respond last and then to close us out.
I would say I definitely enjoy Rev's teaching. I always leave with something, and he makes it plain, and I do appreciate that. So I would definitely tell someone else that, and also that we're not uptight. I can appreciate coming, and I don't feel like if I don't have a dress to wear this Sunday, I can't come, or, you know, so I can appreciate that. And I think for the younger generation, it is important to be accepted, definitely decent and in order, but to be accepted and not have to fit a certain prototype. So I would say that.
And before Reverend Chambers comes, I just want to, let's give a hand to the young adults that participated. They did an excellent job, gave a lot of great feedback, and I took a whole bunch of notes, but this means that we have a whole bunch of work to do. So, but thank you all so much for accepting the invitation. I really do appreciate it, and we'll turn it over to Reverend Chambers.
I would just to encourage any young person to come, I would say that there's a lot of love here. This is a loving church. This is a kind church. This is a generous church. And I would just reiterate everything that has already been said, that we have a great pastor, we have great people. You know, the teaching is just relevant where it helps every area of our lives, and it's something for everyone. And so I think that, you know, it's not a hard sell. You don't have to, you know, try to beat people over the head to say, you know, come to my church and feel the love, be a part of the family, because I think that anybody who walks through this doors would feel that and they would know that. So I think that we should just continue to, you know, speak well, continue to pray for our church, and continue to be involved so that we can see these things come to fruition that we have been talking about today. And I need to follow instructions and close us out, huh? Let's stand. God, we give you thanks and praise for this day that you have made. We thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to come together to hear what the church and millennials have to do. Lord, we thank you for the work that you've placed in our hands. We thank you for our pastor and leadership that sees the value of all ages in our church. We thank you, Lord, that from babies on up to the senior adult, we thank you, Lord, that we all have a place, that we all have a work, that we all have gifts to give back to you. So, Lord, we just ask that we get in the flow of what you're already doing. Touch us, lead us, and guide us so that we can reach beyond these walls and touch this community so that it will be reconciled back to you. And we will forever give you the praise. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.